everyone. My name is Coral Noonan-Terry, and I'm the Associate Director of NISOD. And welcome to another edition of NISODcast. These are informal conversations with leaders and practitioners in the field of education. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr. Janet Zadina. She's an assistant professor at Tulane University School of Medicine. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Coral. It's always a pleasure to be at NISOD.
Well, you are very well known in the field of brain research. So tell us, because I know there's people out there wondering, is brain research a fad or is it here to stay? And then also, just so we're on the same page, briefly define it and tell us a little bit more about it.
All right. Well, it's definitely not a fad. Right now, we are just at the tip of the iceberg of this exciting new frontier of educational neuroscience. So it's very exciting. I was fortunate enough to get in at the beginning and see how it's changed. And at first there were a few misconceptions in the field, but now it's gaining so much credibility and neuroscientists are excited about working with educators. So it's definitely here to stay. We're learning more every day. Now it's a hot topic because it's so exciting to look in the student's brain and see the differences between brains. For example, I show brain scans of difference in activation between good readers and poor readers, or what happens to dendrites when they're stressed. Or one of the exciting things is to see an image of cognitive load, the effort by the brain, between novice learners and practiced learners. And you can see that when a student is learning a new sequence, there's very heavy cognitive load, a lot of effort. And then once they become fluent, the brain isn't working as hard. So you can think about, what does that mean in the classroom? Maybe we can reduce cognitive load by introducing tasks more simply, avoiding distraction, gaining fluency on one task before moving on to another. So it's very exciting, and that's one reason why it's such a hot topic with educators. Now, every day there's new information, and so the educators need to not only get a good foundation in how the brain learns, but also to stay updated. And you asked me what brain research is, and of course, generally speaking, it is the study of the brain. But it encompasses many domains, such as neuroscience, neuropsychology, educational psychology, medicine, and of course the new field of educational neuroscience. But here's where it gets tricky. Taking the scientific research into the classroom is a little tricky. You have to read those science articles and understand them and know the big picture and be very careful about making a credible leap into the classroom. There were some issues on that at first, but it's getting better every day as we look at the differences in brains and learn more about how we can apply this in the classroom. So with better methods and more careful interpretation, we're getting new insights into students and how they learn.
Well, and that leads me into my next question. Mm-hmm. Could you provide some examples of brain strategies that we can utilize in our classrooms?
Yes, you know, we can't say that brain research proves this or that, but certainly it does give us insight. For example, we know that the brain has a natural tendency to see patterns. This is part of the survival network, because if you can't see patterns, then you won't see the snake in the grass or where you found food the last time, and humans wouldn't survive. So since it's so important to survival, when we see patterns or deviations from patterns, we get a little burst of good chemicals in the brain that make us feel good. That's why people like to do puzzles. Aha, I found it, and you feel good. So how can you take advantage of this powerful pathway in the classroom? Ask yourself, how can you turn your lesson into a pattern detection device or activity? How can you let students figure it out themselves rather than turn them into little memory machines? You know, memorizing doesn't give you those good chemicals like figuring it out does. So, for example, if you are doing math, if you give them enough examples, maybe they can figure out area equals length times width. They don't have to memorize the formula. Now they know it and they understand it. So the trick here is tapping into this powerful pathway by letting the students figure it out. I think we've tried so hard to make learning easy that we forget that the brain does like a challenge and learning needs to be active. Now, another strategy that comes from the research is that instead of offering a homework assignment, perhaps you can offer multiple options for homework. Because with the brain scans into different kinds of learners, we can see that we are probably all wired differently. Different people activate different areas, sometimes on the same task, and we see the learning differences in the brain activation. So, in order to do that, to address that, perhaps we can offer multiple options for homework assignments. You know, this research has given us insight that we all have strengths and weaknesses, but my question to educators is, why do we label students by their weakness instead of their strength? Let's use the strength to tackle the learning, to tackle the coursework. And you can do that by offering a menu of homework options, and the students will self-select according to their strength. Because there are many ways to work with the material other than reading and answering questions. They can make a PowerPoint, do a demonstration, build a model. They could make a poster, but the quality has to be high, but they could still work with it differently. So I would ask you, how many ways can you offer students to work with the lesson that you are offering?
Well, you talked about the importance of active learning. So now let's focus on what's one piece of advice you have for engaging students?
One simple thing that's easy to remember to help engage students is to keep it real life and meaningful. And if you do that, you will be able to engage them in multiple pathways.
Well, thank you, Janet, for being with us today. And to those of you watching, we hope that you have learned something that you can take back and use in your classroom. And I really like that one tidbit that you shared with us about let's label students by their strengths and not their weaknesses. Thanks, everyone.